A corridor of white marble, polished so perfectly it mirrors the sky like a still lake. The soft chime of gungroos on the ankles of dancers who glide as if time itself breathes with them. The prince's hand rests upon a golden railing. The gold feels cold, yet it burns. That morning, flags flutter above the palace like tongues of sunlight, and the Brahmins chant verses that scent the air with sandalwood, milk, and promises. He was raised in silence and discipline, with the grace one learns before even walking. Today, before a procession of silver bowls and the music of the sarangi, he will become, before all eyes, more than an heir. He will become a groom, chosen, predestined. But there are letters hidden where gods cannot see, and a door where once a newborn was left, without lineage, without jewels, without blessings. The prince believes he knows his story. The princess carries in her gaze the steel of the kshatriya, and both unknowingly walk toward a purifying fire that does not forgive lies. With every step, the murmur of the court, the priest's sermon, the gleam of gold, everything leads to an impossible sentence. When the drum falls silent, when silence pours like oil, truth will be spoken. There are bloodlines tradition cannot forgive, and yet there are loves that refuse to listen to tradition. You are watching Secrets and Destinations, where palaces are not just stone, they are memory, and love is a road without maps. Take a deep breath with me. If this story moves you, and it will, subscribe now. Turn on the bell so you can feel every vibration of this tale, and tell us in the comments what your heart whispers when the truth falls like a blade. Press play within. The journey begins in the gleam of gold, and ends where ashes learn to speak. The morning light slid across the marble corridors like a silk offering. It had the weightless grace of a prayer whispered too often, something sacred that had forgotten its origin. The palace awoke not with noise, but with scent. Cardamom warming in copper pots, sandalwood coiling through the air, the faint sweetness of milk simmered before sunrise. In this house, even the air was disciplined. Arav stood before the mirror, the reflection of a prince perfectly constructed, or so the world believed. His kurta was ivory, with the slightest shimmer of gold thread, delicate enough to appear accidental. His hair, black and obedient, framed a face that had learned silence before language. His mother's hands had pressed turmeric onto his forehead at dawn, leaving a soft sun between his eyes. The gesture was ritual, ancient and unspokenly fragile. Her fingers trembled only once, a tiny betrayal she hoped he would not notice. He did. The matriarch was a woman who had never misplaced a syllable in her life. She had arranged his education, his virtues, even the rhythm of his breath. To the world, Arav was the epitome of Brahmin discipline. Pious, learned, the kind of man temples welcomed and women respected. Yet this morning, as she drew a vermilion line on his brow, her eyes seemed to search for something that had been misplaced long before. In the courtyard, the first conch shells sang. Their echo rolled along the walls like thunder politely disguised. Servants hurried with bowls of marigolds and brass lamps. The palace itself felt like a throat clearing before it spoke. The city outside already knew. Today the prince would meet his bride, the warrior princess of the kshatriya, the union of scripture and sword. Arav walked down the golden staircase, and the light followed him like a loyal subject. Portraits of ancestors lined the gallery, men in silk turbans, and women whose eyes had never been contradicted. They stared down at him with that painted serenity that only oil and arrogance could preserve. Somewhere between their stares, the air thickened. He could almost hear their voices murmuring through the varnish. "Remember your name, boy. Names are fortresses." Irony, the first of this story. He would spend his life defending a fortress that never belonged to him. In the great hall, the priest waited, robes immaculate, expression carved from duty. He recited blessings in Sanskrit, the kind that sound like thunder, S-shadow. While the elders nodded in rhythm, Arav repeated each word perfectly, his pronunciation sharp enough to please heaven. Still, something inside him faltered, as if a string on a sitar had been tuned too tightly. The palace was alive that morning, yet everything it breathed was rehearsed. Musicians rehearsed devotion, dancers rehearsed grace, even the pigeons rehearsed flight, circling the same pattern above the domes. Arav had never questioned the choreography, but today he felt it, the faintest pulse of resistance under his skin, like an old song refusing to stay forgotten. In the kitchens below, where spices turned to perfume and gossip to prophecy, the servants moved like water. None of them looked up as he passed by, not because of respect, but because of knowledge. Kitchens always knew, fires listened. Steam carried secrets up through the ceiling tiles until they condensed on marble. From one such kitchen door, a pair of eyes followed him, Lakshmi, the old cook. Her hands, the color of roasted almonds, paused over a bowl of flour. For 25 years she had watched him grow, watched the matriarch's face age, watched the world call the boy pure. Only she remembered the night the palace door had opened to a cry that did not belong. Irony the second, truth can live its entire life in a kitchen and never be invited upstairs. Arav felt the gaze even as he turned the corner. The smell of smoke and sugar trailed him. In his chest a dissonance formed, the kind that has no name, only weight. By mid-morning the courtyard shimmered like the inside of a brass bowl. Priests scattered petals in concentric circles, musicians tuned their sitars, the matriarch gave orders with a tone that could curdle milk. Arav stood beneath the grand balcony where his bride would appear. The sunlight struck his cheek and found no flaw. He knew his role by heart. He would bow. He would speak gently. He would be the image that legends could stand upon. And when the princess arrived, all of India, or at least the part that mattered, would breathe in approval. He had not yet seen her, but her name, Meera, moved through the palace like a promise written in fire. They said her beauty could silence arguments. They said her will could start them. He imagined her without effort, eyes the color of burnt honey, hands accustomed to the weight of both jasmine and sword. A Kshatriya princess, flame wrapped in silk. He almost smiled. Arav's tutor approached him then, an old scholar with eyes like thin glass. "Remember," the man whispered, "love is ceremony, not rebellion." "Then why does it feel like both?" Arav replied. The old man blinked. He had no answer, only a mantra meant for comfort. Dharma protects those who protect Dharma. But Dharma, Arav thought, had never been tested by love. Outside the walls, the city vibrated with life. Merchants laid out their silks and sweets, unaware that their prince's destiny would soon collapse under the weight of a single word. Inside, the matriarch moved from hall to hall like a specter of order, ensuring that no imperfection would offend the gods. Every candle had to burn the same height. Every offering had to face east. Tradition demanded symmetry, even in tragedy. And somewhere between the geometry of ritual and the chaos of the human heart, the first crack appeared. That afternoon, Arav visited the temple chamber. It was the quietest place in the palace, the one room untouched by gold. The idols were dark, carved from granite older than guilt. He knelt, eyes closed, hands joined. "What is purity?" he whispered to the silence. "Is it what we are told we are, or what we become when no one watches?" The silence, ever patient, gave no reply. Down the hall, a door creaked open. The matriarch entered, her shadow long and trembling. She watched her son pray and felt a pulse of panic beneath her ribs. There was no turning back now. The ceremony was in 2 days. The princess was on her way. And the truth, and that stubborn, sleepless truth, was beginning to pace inside her chest. That night, while the palace slept, she opened an old cedar chest in her chamber. Inside lay a folded cloth, once soft, now brittle with time. A tiny red thread coiled beside it. There was also a letter, faded and torn, its edges kissed by dust. The ink was the color of dried blood. She unfolded it only halfway before closing it again. Her hands trembled the way mountains tremble before storms. She looked toward the temple and whispered, "Forgive me, if forgiveness is still a language you speak." The next morning, the palace smelled of marigolds and expectation. The matriarch avoided Lakshmi's eyes. Arav rehearsed his vows beneath the banyan tree, unaware that every word he practiced would soon crumble in his mouth. Above them, pigeons gathered along the palace eaves, wings flicking nervously. Perhaps they sensed what the humans did not, that something long buried was preparing to breathe. Irony, the third, the gods always arrive early, but mortals never notice until it's too late. By sunset, the hall of portraits was lit by hundreds of tiny lamps. Their flames trembled, reflections multiplying across the mirrors like a nervous prophecy. Arav walked through the corridor, feeling the echo of his own footsteps chase him. He paused before a painting of a long-dead ancestor, a warrior priest whose legend filled entire scriptures. "Tell me," Arav murmured to the portrait, "what would you do if your name was a borrowed one?" The oil eyes did not answer, but in the silence he thought he heard a whisper, or maybe only his own fear. "Return what was never yours." That night, thunder crawled over the horizon, though the sky remained clear. Arav stood on his balcony, watching the lamps below flicker like a constellation rehearsing its fall. Somewhere in the distance, a woman's laughter carried on the wind. Maybe Mira's, maybe a servant's. It sounded like a future he was almost ready to believe in. He did not see the matriarch standing behind the curtains of her chamber, staring at the same sky, the same thunderless storm. Nor did he see Lakshmi in the kitchen, wiping her eyes with the edge of her sari, whispering to the god of fire, "Keep him safe when the truth comes for him." Because the truth, like dawn, never asks permission to arrive. At the edge of the palace courtyard, a single lamp went out. A servant relit it, muttering that it was only the wind. But in old houses, wind and omen often wear the same face. And somewhere in the dark, beneath the chorus of insects and distant drums, a memory stirred, a cry from a night long buried, echoing softly through the marble veins of the house. The gold gleamed, the gold waited. The gold, though no one yet understood it, had already begun to burn. The desert wind was older than the walls of her palace. It came each morning carrying dust and prophecy, brushing past courtyards where women's laughter tangled with the clinking of bangles. In that wind, Mira had grown, not like a flower, but like iron left to temper under an unrelenting sun. Her father's house was carved from sandstone and memory. Every pillar bore scars of battles no one talked about anymore. Her ancestors had been kshatriya, guardians, warriors, the keepers of oaths and bloodlines. To be born among them was to inherit discipline like a second skin. Mira's earliest toy had been a dagger dulled for safety. Her first lesson, how to stand straight when fear arrived. At dawn, she practiced archery in the palace yard, her sari tied above her ankles, her hair coiled in a warrior's knot. The arrow's whistle cut through the morning chants of monks. Servants paused discreetly, caught between admiration and superstition. The sight of a princess with a weapon was considered both auspicious and dangerous. The arrow struck the center of the target. She smiled. Irony the first. Strength in a woman was celebrated only when it served a man's story. Inside, her mother, the queen, arranged garlands for the gods. "You aim too fiercely," she murmured as Mira entered. "A wife must learn softness. The world punishes accuracy in women." Mira only bowed. She had long learned the choreography of obedience, yet even her silence had the sharpness of a blade left unsheathed. When she was told of the match, that she would be betrothed to Arav, the Brahmin prince of the eastern provinces, her reaction was a stillness so profound it frightened the court astrologer. A princess who did not smile or faint at her engagement? Omen unclear. That evening she walked alone through the veranda, the desert beyond shimmering like a mirage half remembered. Marriage to a Brahmin, the priest said, would restore divine balance between knowledge and power, the sacred union of scripture and sword. The queen repeated this as if reciting a hymn. The father called it strategy, but to Mira it felt like a war disguised as worship. The messenger had brought a miniature painting of Arav, inked in ivory and lapis lazuli, framed with gold. His eyes, calm and precise, looked away from the artist, as if already seeing something no one else could. She studied the portrait beneath the flicker of an oil lamp and wondered, does serenity hide or confess? Her maid Kavya hovered nearby. "They say he is a man of virtue," she whispered. "They always say that," Mira replied, until virtue becomes inconvenient. Kavya giggled nervously. The princess did not. That night, Mira wrote a letter she would never send. To the one who will one day call me his, I have been taught that love is duty and duty is worship, but I suspect both are words men invented to make us quiet. If you are kind, do not be merciful. Mercy is the cousin of superiority. I would rather be your equal in rebellion than your queen in peace. She sealed it with wax, then placed it inside her jewelry box, a small rebellion shaped like ink. Outside her chamber, the sound of drums rose. Not celebration, but training. Soldiers practiced formation under torchlight, and the rhythm bled through her walls. Every beat echoed the stories she had grown up with. Kings who ruled with justice, queens who jumped into fire to prove devotion. She used to wonder as a child what would happen if one refused the fire. No one ever answered. Irony the second. In a land that worshipped goddesses, mortal women were expected to disappear quietly into smoke. The following morning, the royal caravan prepared to travel to the Brahmin province. The sun hit the domes of the palace like molten brass. Elephants wore embroidered blankets heavy with gold thread. Servants sprinkled rosewater on the wheels of the carriages to bless the journey. The scent mingled with dust and destiny. Mira dressed in crimson silk, her bangles whispering against one another like small arguments. On her forehead, her mother placed a dot of vermilion, a sun of obedience. "Be gracious," her mother said. "Is grace the same as silence?" Mira asked. Her mother looked away. As the caravan departed, villagers lined the streets throwing petals and prayers. Children shouted blessings, old women muttered predictions. Someone whispered that the stars themselves had arranged this union. Mira looked up. The sky was blank. The stars were asleep, or perhaps indifferent. Hours turned into days. The journey wound through dry plains and temples half-eaten by vines. At night, when the fires dimmed and the guards snored, Mira would step out of her tent and stare at the horizon, where distant palaces shimmered like dreams in exile. Kavya would sometimes join her, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "Do you think he will love you?" "Love," Mira said softly, "is a word with too much jewelry on it. I'll wait to see what it weighs." Fact the first. Before India's independence in 1947, marriages among noble families were often arranged not by affection, but by caste alliances. Kshatriya bloodlines merged with Brahmin intellect to secure both spiritual and political legitimacy. Curiosity the first. In certain provinces, royal astrologers decided the wedding date based not on stars, but on the sound made when a conch shell was blown in a closed hall. The note that lingered longest determined destiny. Debate the first. Is fate an echo we hear, or a sound we create ourselves? The third evening, the caravan reached a riverbank where the waters glowed faintly under moonlight. Mira dismounted and knelt, her reflection trembling on the surface. "Tell me," she whispered to her reflection, "if blood decides worth, why does the river not care whose body it cools?" The water, like all honest witnesses, refused to answer. When the caravan entered the Brahmin province, the air itself seemed to bow. The temples were taller, the prayers louder. Everything smelled of order. Mira noticed how people lowered their gaze as her carriage passed, not out of reverence, but calculation. Every smile was measured, every greeting weighed. She thought of Arav again, of his portrait, of those quiet eyes. Could a man raised in such stillness hear anything beyond duty? On the morning of their meeting, she rose before dawn. Her maid combed her long black hair until it shone like polished obsidian. She wore the sari of engagement, crimson with gold borders, the color of sunrise pretending to be flame. Outside, the palace bells announced the arrival of the princess to her future. As she walked through the corridors, musicians played sitar strings so delicate they sounded like glass breaking underwater. The hall opened before her, a sea of silk, incense, and expectation. And there he was, Arav, exactly as painted, but more human, and therefore more dangerous. His eyes were steady but uncertain, as if he recognized something and could not name it. Mira felt her breath betray her once. He bowed. She inclined her head. The air between them was not romance, it was recognition. Like two flames acknowledging each other across a distance neither had chosen. The priest recited verses, and the crowd responded as trained. The matriarch watched, her smile a fortress built from habit. Mira caught it and for an instant saw not pride, but fear. Later, during the welcoming feast, Arav approached her under the pretext of ritual conversation. "You do not look afraid," he said quietly. "I am," she replied. "Just not of you." "What then?" "Of how easily people call obedience peace." He smiled faintly. "Perhaps peace is simply well-behaved rebellion." For a moment something unspoken bridged them, and then, as swiftly as it came, it vanished, swallowed by the orchestra of etiquette surrounding them. When the evening ended, Mira returned to her guest chamber. The night sky above the palace was unusually still. She felt the strange weight of anticipation, as though the gods were rearranging their seats for what was to come. In the corridor outside, she heard the muffled voice of the matriarch speaking to someone, urgency in her tone. The words were indistinct, but one phrase reached Mira like an arrow through fabric. "He must never know." Her hand froze on the doorframe. She waited. The footsteps retreated. Silence folded itself neatly over the hall. Irony the third. Secrets, like perfumes, cling longest to those who try hardest to wash them away. That night, Mira lay awake, watching the oil lamp shiver. Her heart beat in a rhythm she did not recognize. Not fear, not excitement, something stranger. The awareness that every perfection conceals a flaw and every sacred vow, a price. Outside, the wind shifted. Somewhere in the darkness, a single bell rang, unprompted. Tomorrow she would stand beside Arav in the temple of their union, before gods carved from stone and eyes carved from expectation. She did not yet know that those same gods would soon turn away. And if the stars above had a language, they might have whispered the truth already. The gold burns brightest just before it melts. The morning began with a procession of sound. Conch shells, temple drums, the rhythmic clash of bells, all calling to the gods, or perhaps to distract them. The palace smelled of incense and new beginnings, yet beneath the perfume of sanctity, something sour lingered like milk left too long in the sun. Arav stood in the antechamber, his palms pressed together in the practiced pose of devotion. Priests surrounded him, reciting verses that had outlived empires. Behind the chants he heard the rustle of silk, Mira's arrival. Her footsteps were soft, but they carried the certainty of someone who had already walked through fire. When their eyes met, the air forgot to breathe. She was dressed in red again, though now the shade was deeper, closer to blood than to sunrise. Gold dust clung to her arms like pollen, and in her hair jasmine blossoms surrendered their fragrance too easily. He wanted to speak, but the script of ceremony allowed only silence. The priest would do all the talking, the gods, all the judging. As the rituals began, Arav's mind drifted. He thought of his mother's eyes at breakfast, eyes that had not slept, eyes that carried a storm's indecision. He thought of Lakshmi's absence from the kitchen that morning, strange and unspoken. He thought of a dream he'd had the night before, in which a child cried outside a door, and no one came. The priest's voice sliced through his reverie. "Name your parents, my lord, so that heaven may recognize you." The words were familiar, repeated at every rite of passage. Arav opened his mouth to answer, but before the sound emerged, he noticed something. A flicker in his mother's posture, a tremor so brief it could have been imagination. Still, it anchored in him like a hook. He spoke his father's name. The hall echoed it back in reverence. Then came the second question. "And your mother?" A beat of silence. The matriarch's hand gripped the edge of her chair. Lakshmi had just entered the hall carrying a tray of offerings, her eyes darting from the prince to the priest to the matriarch, and something in her face, something buried for decades, broke its silence. She dropped the tray. The sound was not loud, but it was absolute. Brass met marble with the clarity of confession. The hall froze. Even the incense seemed to hesitate mid-air. Irony the first. Truth rarely announces itself in speeches. It prefers the language of accidents. Lakshmi knelt to gather the scattered petals, her fingers trembling. The matriarch stood abruptly. "Leave it," she commanded. But her voice lacked its usual authority. It cracked like a dry twig. The priest, confused, repeated, "Name your mother, my lord." Arav hesitated. He looked toward her, the woman who had given him everything but explanations. "My mother is Devi Shastri," he said, the name tasting both familiar and foreign. A pause. The priest frowned. "Her lineage?" And there it was, the question that unlocked every door best left closed. Devi Shastri's lineage was sacred, ancient, unblemished. Or so they had told him. But now, in the silence that followed, he sensed it, the walls themselves leaning in, hungry for something unsaid. His mother opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Lakshmi's voice rose, uninvited, trembling, but clear. "Forgive me, my lady," she said, "but the gods already know the truth." Every head turned. The matriarch whispered, "Lakshmi, stop." But she didn't. "I was there," the old cook said, each word dragging a lifetime behind it. "That night, the storm, the cry at the door. The boy was not born under this roof." The priest stepped back. Gasps fluttered through the hall like startled birds. Arav's heartbeat thundered in his ears. "What are you saying?" Lakshmi's eyes filled, not with guilt, but with relief. "You were left at our doorstep, my prince, wrapped in cloth, no name, no blessing, only a red thread on your wrist, the kind tied to children born outside the system." Outside the system. The phrase struck him harder than any curse. Irony the second. Revelation never arrives when you re-ready. It arrives when you are dressed in gold. The matriarch's composure fractured. She crossed the room in 3 strides and slapped Lakshmi. The sound echoed, soft, human, devastating. "Enough," she hissed. "Do you want to destroy him?" Lakshmi did not flinch. "The truth already has." The priest stammered, uncertain whether to flee or to sanctify. Mira watched, frozen, her lips slightly parted. The silence between her and Arav was no longer ceremonial. It was survival. "A lie," the matriarch declared. "A servant's lie." But her voice was wrong, too brittle, too desperate. Arav saw it then in the tiny tremor at the corner of her mouth, guilt wearing the mask of outrage. He turned to her. "Mother," he said, and the word felt like a wound. "Is it true?" She closed her eyes. For a long time, there was nothing. Only the crackle of the oil lamps and the fading echo of incense turning to ash. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "We found you, we gave you a name, we gave you everything." "And my birth?" Arav asked. She did not answer. He felt the world tilt, the floor beneath his feet receding like tide. Around him, whispers multiplied. Brahmin elders, guests, courtiers, the sacred audience transformed into a jury. Mira stepped forward, her anklets barely whispering. "Stop this," she said to the priest. "End the ceremony." The priest hesitated. "Without the mother's name, the union cannot be sanctified." "Then let it remain unsanctified," she said, her voice a blade. Fact the first, in traditional Hindu marriage rituals, the recitation of a mother's name is not merely formality, it is the invocation of lineage, the invisible passport of purity. Without it, the gods cannot bless the union. Curiosity the first. In some ancient regions, priests whispered the mother's name only once during a ceremony, believing that to repeat it invited envy from the spirits. Debate the first. If purity is inherited, what happens when compassion rewrites inheritance? The matriarch collapsed onto her seat. Servants rushed to steady her, but she waved them away. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He would have died if we hadn't taken him. He was left there because he was Dalit. The priests would have burned him as impurity." The word Dalit fell into the hall like a stone dropped into still water. One syllable, infinite ripples. Arav stared at her. "Dalit?" he repeated, his voice foreign to his own ears. "You mean untouchable?" No one spoke. Outside, thunder rumbled, real this time, not metaphor. Rain began to trace the windows, hesitant and uneven, as if the sky itself felt awkward, witnessing human cruelty. The guests began to disperse quietly. One man coughed, another crossed himself. Mira stood unmoving, her face pale but fierce. Arav turned to her, desperate for something, denial, comfort, anything. She stepped closer. "What they call untouchable," she said softly, "is only what they fear touching." Her words reached him, but the world behind them was already collapsing. The priests extinguished the sacred fire. The flames hissed as though offended. The matriarch wept into her hands. Lakshmi bowed her head, whispering prayers that tasted of salt. Irony, the third. The gods demand truth, and then punish mortals for giving it to them. Arav walked out of the hall. The rain met him at the threshold, washing the vermilion mark from his forehead. Red streaked down his face like war paint turned confession. Behind him voices rose, orders, denials, the machinery of shame grinding into motion. Ahead, the palace corridor stretched like an endless mirror, reflecting a man who no longer fit inside his own name. He paused at the door of the temple room, the one place that had once given him peace. The idols looked down, unblinking. "You knew," he whispered. "You all knew." The lamps flickered but offered no absolution. He laughed quietly, a sound halfway between disbelief and despair. "Untouchable," he said to the darkness. "Then let them see how far impurity walks when it refuses to crawl." And with that, he stepped into the rain, leaving behind a hall full of gods who had forgotten how to forgive. The kitchen woke earlier than guilt. Long before the first conch shell cried, fires were coaxed from last night's embers, copper pots were rinsed with a prayer and a hiss, and cardamom caved under the pestle like a secret finally confessing. Here, the palace was honest. Heat spoke plainly, knives argued without metaphor, and water judged everything by whether it boiled. Lakshmi moved through the steam like a memory with hands. Flour dusted her wrists, turmeric stained her nails the color of withheld sunlight. The hall above had already begun to shake with rumor. The dropped tray, the broken silence, the word that turned gods into spectators. Down here, the servants did not whisper. They edited. Gossip, sliced fine as onions, became history. Irony, the first. Upstairs, truth was a scandal. Downstairs, it was inventory. The matriarch entered without warning, the air tightening around her like a corset. Even the ladles stood straighter. She had not slept. Grief drew parentheses around her mouth, and pride tried to fill them. She dismissed the others with a tilt of her chin. Only Lakshmi remained, wiping the rim of a brass bowl with unhurried care. "Why?" the matriarch asked. "No honorifics, no armor. Why today?" Lakshmi met her eyes. Because today, silence would have become a lie told by everyone. "You have doomed him," the matriarch's voice frayed. "The priests will use the word as a weapon. The Kshatriya court will call off the right. You have taken his name and hung a millstone from it." "I have taken the stone off his throat," Lakshmi replied softly. He was drowning in gold. A pot began to boil over. Neither woman moved to save it. Milk hissed down the sides like a reprimand. The matriarch pressed her palms to the table. I lifted him from the cold. I wrapped him in a new name. "Do you understand what a name costs in this house?" Lakshmi nodded. "I paid for it with my back." They stood like that. 2 women, 2 histories, 1 boy, while cumin crackled in hot oil, releasing a scent that felt like a hand on the shoulder. The matriarch's gaze slid to the old cedar box Lakshmi kept near the hearth, a thing of hinges and habit. "The letter," the matriarch said. "Where is it?" Lakshmi hesitated, then took the box and placed it between them. Inside, the thread that had once circled an infant's wrist, the cloth too thin to be called a blanket, the folded page that still remembered the taste of rain. The matriarch did not touch it. I told myself the gods had placed him at my door. "They did," Lakshmi said. "Through hands the city refused to bless. Irony the second. Mercy performed in private becomes pride performed in public." Noise swelled at the kitchen threshold, servants pretending not to listen. Lakshmi flicked her eyes. Like birds, they scattered. The matriarch's shoulders eased a fraction, then tensed again as if remembering they were not allowed. "Do you think Mira will abandon him?" she asked, almost to the spice rack. "Mira looks at people the way knives look at rope," Lakshmi said. If she loves him, it will be to cut him free, not to bind him. Love, the matriarch scoffed. Luxury for those with names the world recognizes. Or fuel, Lakshmi said, for those who must light their own. A boy slipped in with empty pitchers, eyes too round to hide curiosity. Out, the matriarch said. He vanished like a swallowed word. Above them a drumbeat began, not ritual, but restlessness. Guests were leaving, voices trailing apologies that smelled of incense and fear. The kitchen doors kept swinging, bringing in gusts of rumor. The priest had doused the fire, the musicians had packed their instruments. The palace corridors had learned a new echo, the syllable Dalit rolling like a pebble that wanted to be an avalanche. Lakshmi closed the box. If you want the letter hidden again, I will hide it. If you want it burned, I will feed it to the cleanest flame. The matriarch's eyes flicked to the hearth. Fire purifies, she said, and immediately looked ashamed of the word. Fire reveals, Lakshmi corrected. Purity is a story the powerful tell when they need to forgive themselves. Fact, the first, before mid-century reforms, many princely states guarded caste boundaries with ritual like fortresses guard gates. Kitchens were segregated. Water had owners. A shadow could be an offense. Curiosity the first. In some villages, a bell was struck if a person of impure status approached. The sound was said to protect the sight of the pure. Thus, compassion became acoustics. Debate, the first. Does a boundary become sacred because it protects or because it excludes? The matriarch sank onto a low stool, the kitchen finally permitting her to be a woman instead of an institution. When I found him, she said, his skin was cold. I thought, if I warm him quickly enough, the world will not have time to judge. And for years, Lakshmi said, you were faster than the world. A shadow darkened the doorway, Meera. She stepped in without ceremony, the smell of rain tugging at her crimson silk. The room shifted to accommodate her, not out of deference but expectation. Forgive me, Meera said, for entering the real heart of the house without an invitation. This room does not know invitations, Lakshmi said, only hunger. Meera's gaze fell to the cedar box. Is that? Yes, the matriarch answered. The word was both admission and surrender. Meera looked between them. Her voice, when it came, carried iron and mercy in equal parts. I will not permit them to erase him for being honest about how he began. Permit? The matriarch nearly smiled, brittle as spun sugar. Princess, this house does not speak the language of permission. Then I will teach it, Meera said, even if I must do so with a knife. Lakshmi's eyes softened. The matriarchs did not, but something unclenched behind them, like a fist remembering it was a hand. Steps thundered in the corridor, the priest's attendant, breathless. He bowed at the threshold. My lady, the council demands your presence. They say the engagement is suspended until a purification is performed. On whom? Meera asked, though she already knew. On the prince, the boy replied, staring at the floor as if it could absolve him. Irony, the third. When a lie fails, the punishment seeks the person who was lied to. The matriarch rose, taller than her doubts. Tell them, she said, I will come. When the boy left, quiet returned in a different shape, not peace, but plan. Meera turned to Lakshmi. The letter. May I read it? Lakshmi glanced at the matriarch, who nodded once, then twice, as if consenting to gravity. Meera unfolded the page. The handwriting faltered, refused flourish. Forgive the sin of my body, it read. Forgive the name I could not give. I leave him where the gods will find him. I leave him where the rich pretend the gods live. The words shivered with rain, long dry. Meera refolded the letter with the tenderness one reserves for bones. This, she said, belongs to the altar now, not to a box. The matriarch startled. The altar? If the gods will judge, let them handle evidence, Meera said. Let the truth burn beside their lamps. Let every prayer pass over it like wind over a grave that refuses to stay flat. Lakshmi exhaled, a sound as old as kitchens. The altar will not keep it safe. No, Meera replied, but it will keep it seen. Footsteps approached from the far corridor, several pairs, deliberate. Official. The council was coming. The house had chosen its hour. The matriarch reached for the letter, then stopped, as if touching it would make the past more present than she could bear. "Go," Lakshmi said. "I will place it." "Where?" the matriarch asked. "Beneath the oil lamp of Ganesha," Lakshmi answered. "He is fond of beginnings, and of obstacles that think they are gods." Rain tightened its grip on the world. The kitchen door fluttered. Somewhere above, a bell rang by no human hand. Lakshmi slid the letter into the sleeve of her blouse. Meera lifted her chin, a queen rehearsing in a room where queens were not supposed to exist. The matriarch wiped her eyes with a corner of her sari no one would notice. "Whatever they demand," Meera said, "I will not let them name his soul with their fear." The matriarch studied her as if measuring an heirloom against a new world. "Then be quick," she said. "Truth is faster when it runs on young legs." They moved. Out of the kitchen into the corridors where incense still pretended to be innocence, past portraits that had never imagined a day like this, toward a shrine whose lamps awaited more than oil. At the last corner, Lakshmi paused. Someone was already standing by the altar, a shadow cut from authority, a hand reaching toward the lamp as if to smother it. She drew breath to call out. The hand closed over the flame, darkness jumped. And in that newborn dark, Lakshmi felt the letter slide slick with sweat against her skin, warm, alive, and suddenly very visible to whoever turned next. The palace had never been this quiet, not even during mourning, not even when kings had died. Silence now had a purpose. It was waiting to see what the gods would do. By dawn, the council's verdict was already gossip in the streets. The prince's birth had been questioned. The engagement was suspended. Purification would decide his fate. The city woke divided, half hungry for scandal, half afraid of heaven. Arav stood before the mirror, his reflection stripped of illusion. His kurta, once a symbol of pride, now felt like costume. The mark of turmeric his mother had drawn days ago had faded to the color of regret. He wondered if the gods could tell the difference between ceremony and apology. Outside his door, footsteps, soft, deliberate. Meera entered without waiting for permission. The air between them tightened, remembering too much. "You shouldn't be here," Arav said. "Then why does it feel like the only place left where I can breathe?" she answered. Her voice carried exhaustion disguised as defiance. She moved closer. "They will perform the purification," she said. "They want to wash away what you are, as if dirt can be insulted by water." Arav's jaw clenched. "It is tradition. It is cruelty dressed as order," she said. "If you accept it, they'll say you were guilty. If you refuse, they'll say you were proud. Either way, they will build your virtue from your ashes." He looked at her, the warrior's daughter, the woman who spoke to him as if every word was a rescue. "What would you have me do?" Meera reached out, brushing his hand. "Walk through the fire, Arav, but walk your way, not theirs." Irony. The first. Rebellion can look exactly like obedience depending on who's watching. The drums began. Deep, rhythmic, ancient. They summoned the court to the courtyard, where the sacred flame waited. When Arav stepped outside, the sky was pale gold, the kind of morning that pretends to be merciful. The matriarch was already seated among the elders, her face an unreadable scripture. The priest adjusted his robes, his eyes trained on the fire pit where ghee burned slow and bright. Lakshmi stood in the shadows, one hand pressed against her chest. Beneath the fabric, the letter warmed against her skin like a heartbeat. She was supposed to place it under the altar before the ceremony began, but the corridors had changed. Too many eyes, too much faith armed with suspicion. The drums grew louder. Arav approached the flame. Every gaze in the courtyard followed him, heavy as prayer. The priest began the chant, words older than compassion, older than mercy. Arav repeated them, though they felt foreign now. Syllables that once meant belonging, now tasting of exile. The ritual called for the offering of sacred rice, symbol of purity. Arav took the grains in his palm and hesitated. Across the fire, Meera watched him. Her eyes said, "You do not owe them your shame." He dropped the rice into the fire anyway. Smoke rose, curling like a serpent finding its name. The priest nodded approvingly, mistaking surrender for devotion. "The prince humbles himself before the gods," he proclaimed. The crowd murmured approval, hungry for restoration. The matriarch exhaled, not relief exactly, but delay. Then Lakshmi moved. She stepped out of the shadow, the cedar box clutched to her chest. "Wait," she said, her voice small yet carrying like thunder in a well. "There is something the gods must see before they decide who is pure." The priest froze mid-chant, the matriarch's face drained of color. Arav turned. "Lakshmi," he whispered. She walked forward, slow and steady, the crowd parting before her. Every step released another rumor into the air. She reached the altar and placed the letter beside the lamp of Ganesha. "This," she said, "is the truth that began all of this. Let it burn if truth offends the gods." Irony. The second. Sometimes faith needs fire more than fire needs faith. The priest stepped forward, outraged. "This is sacrilege. So was leaving a child to die because of his birth," Mira said, stepping to Arav's side. Her voice cut through the hall like a clean blade. "If the gods condemn truth, then perhaps they no longer belong here." Gasps rippled. The matriarch rose. "Enough, both of you!" But Arav spoke over her, his voice steady now, stronger than before. "No, mother. Let them listen." He turned to the crowd. "I was not born among you. You call my blood impure. Yet every prayer I've spoken, every ritual I've followed, every god I've honored, were they all false because of where I was found?" Silence. Even the wind paused as if ashamed. He continued, "If purity means cruelty, then impurity must be closer to mercy. Fact the first. In some princely courts, purification rituals for caste violation involved walking around the sacred fire 7 times while priests recited mantras to restore cosmic order. Refusing the rite was considered social death. Curiosity the first. Some believed that if a flame flickered eastward during the ritual, the gods had accepted the penitent. Westward, and they had turned away. Debate the first. Is redemption a gift from heaven or a rebellion of conscience? The fire crackled, flickering wildly, first east, then west, then straight upward, defiant. The matriarch covered her face. The priest shouted for guards to remove Lakshmi, but no one moved. Everyone watched the flame. Arav stepped closer. "If this fire decides who I am, let it burn for truth, not for cleansing." He reached into the altar and picked up the letter. The crowd gasped. The priest cried out, "Do not touch the offering," but Arav opened it anyway. His voice trembled as he read aloud, "I leave him where the rich pretend the gods live." The words hovered in the smoke, fragile and immortal. Mira came forward. "The gods have already chosen," she said. "They chose him the day he survived their silence." Irony the third. Sometimes blasphemy is just honesty spoken too clearly. A gust of wind swept through the courtyard, scattering ashes into the air. The flame surged, bright, fierce, and then, abruptly, gentle. When the smoke cleared, the letter had burned cleanly. No trace, no proof, only scent. Arav turned to Mira. "They will call us cursed," he said quietly. "Then let us be the curse that teaches them mercy," she replied. Around them, the council broke into chaos. Orders shouted, guards confused, the matriarch sobbing into her palms. Above it all, the sky cracked open with thunder, a sound so vast it felt like judgment redefined. The fire hissed once more, then died. And in the thin, aching silence that followed, no one noticed that Arav and Mira were already walking away, through the drifting smoke hand in hand, toward a horizon that looked suspiciously like freedom. Smoke lingered long after the fire had died. It clung to the walls, to the silks, to the bones of the air. Even the gods, carved from stone, seemed to wear its residue like remorse. The courtyard was empty now. Only ash and whispers remained. Servants moved quietly, sweeping what they could, pretending not to remember what they'd seen. Above them, the sky had turned the color of cooling brass. Arav and Mira walked through the outer corridor, their shadows stretched thin across the marble. Behind them, the matriarch's sobs echoed faintly, a lullaby the world had outgrown. Ahead, the temple loomed again, silent, waiting, watching. They stopped before its steps. Arav spoke first. "It burned," he said. "The letter is gone." "Not gone," Mira answered. "It lives where truth always lives, in the eyes of those who cannot forget." He looked at his hands, blackened faintly by ash. "My whole life was built on a name that wasn't mine, and still, losing it feels like tearing skin." Mira touched his cheek. "Names are tools for others to find us. You can choose what they find next." Inside the temple, a single lamp still burned before the altar, a stubborn flicker of light against the soot. The scent of burnt ghee hung heavy, sweet and sickening. Arav stepped closer, tracing the rim of the stone basin where the purification fire had stood. His fingers found heat still trapped beneath the surface. From the shadows, Lakshmi appeared, her sari stained with smoke. She bowed her head low. "My prince," she whispered, "forgive me for what I did, and for what I failed to do sooner." Arav turned to her. "You told the truth. The only sin left in this house is pretending it never happened." She shook her head. "Truth costs more than lies here. I fear they will make me proof of it." Mira's eyes sharpened. "They won't touch you." "They won't have to," Lakshmi said. "I have lived long enough to know when I've outstayed forgiveness." Irony. The first. Those who save others are always the first to confess. Arav looked around the temple. The idols stared back, unmoved. "When I was a child," he said, "I thought these faces saw everything, that they kept records. Now I wonder if they've just been watching us invent rules for them." Mira knelt before the altar. Maybe they watch to see who stops believing. The three of them stood there, the prince, the princess, and the servant, framed by the quiet judgment of eternity. The lamp wavered, casting tremors of gold across their faces. Lakshmi reached into her blouse and drew out what no one expected. A sliver of the letter, half burned, the corner that the flame had missed. "I couldn't let it all turn to smoke," she said. "Some words fight for air." Arav took it gently. The fragment read only, "The gods will find him." He smiled, not joy but recognition. Maybe they finally did. Fact the first. In several Indian temples before 1950, letters of confession or prayer were hidden beneath idols, offerings of truth, not wealth. They were said to weigh on the conscience of the divine until answered. Curiosity the first. Once every few decades, when priests cleaned the altars, they sometimes found thousands of such notes, forgotten prayers folded into dust, each beginning with, "Forgive me," each unsigned. Debate the first. If the gods do not speak, do they at least read? Arav looked at Mira. "If this is where it began, let it end differently." "What do you mean?" she asked. He took the burned fragment and slipped it beneath the lamp's base. No more hiding what was done. No more pretending the altar is blind. The air shifted. The lamp flame stretched upward, long and straight, as if the fire itself understood. For a moment, the temple felt alive, the kind of silence that precedes a verdict. Outside, thunder murmured again, low and contemplative. Mira said softly, "They'll call this blasphemy." Arav smiled. "Let them. A god that fears honesty deserves rebellion." Lakshmi bowed her head. "I should leave before they find me." "You'll leave with us," Mira said. "Tonight." The older woman hesitated, eyes glistening. "And where will you go?" Arav looked toward the horizon visible through the temple gate, the faint promise of rain washing the dust. "Somewhere they Dunti ask what your mother Essin name was before giving you water." Irony, the second. Purity flees the world, yet impurity builds the roads. The matriarch's voice startled them. She stood in the doorway, pale and older by decades. "You mean to run?" Arav turned slowly. "You taught me to walk toward light, Mother. I'm only following the lesson." She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the burning lamp. "You defy everything we built." "We built a lie," he said. "I am only leaving the architecture." Her lip trembled. "And what will you be out there?" "Alive," he said. "Maybe that's enough." For a moment she looked at Mira, the daughter she'd never raised but somehow now understood. "If you go, they'll call you impure forever," she said. Mira's answer came like a blade laid gently on silk. "Then forever will finally mean something true." Fact the second. Among royal families, exile was often considered worse than death, a slow erasure of memory, a life that history refused to write down. Curiosity, the second. Despite this, some exiled royals were later worshipped as saints, proof that disgrace and divinity sometimes share a door. Debate the second. Does redemption require distance or return? The matriarch's hand reached for her sons. For years she had guided it toward ceremony, toward correctness. Now she placed it over the flame. The heat licked both their skin, gentle and real. "You were never impurity," she said, "only proof that love can be disobedient." Arav's voice caught. "Then bless our leaving." She nodded, though the gesture looked like surrender disguised as grace. "Go before the council returns, and take the gods with you, and they're tired of being statues." Irony the third. Absolution always arrives the moment it's no longer needed. As they left, Lakshmi lingered one last time by the altar. She whispered to the fragment beneath the lamp, "You've been seen now, rest." When she turned away, the flame flickered once, twice, then steadied, brighter than before. Outside, the first rain began to fall, soft, persistent, alive. The courtyard drank it greedily, washing ash into rivers of grey. Somewhere behind them, the temple bell rang once, deep and final. Arav and Mira walked through the gate hand in hand. Lakshmi followed a few steps behind, her face lifted to the rain. Above them, the storm gathered, not as punishment, but as witness. And beneath the altar, a half-burned scrap of paper began to curl, not to vanish, but to reveal one last line as the ink bled free. "Let him live where truth has no caste." By afternoon, the palace had the smell of a courtroom. Heated stone, damp wool, and breath held too long. The council assembled in the Hall of Judgment, a room where time had been taught to stand still. Carved pillars bore scenes of gods arbitrating human failures. Today, the carvings looked tired. Arav entered with Mira beside him and Lakshmi a step behind. The matriarch had gone ahead to face the storm first, her sari the color of surrender. Elders filled the semicircle of seats. Their jewels did not glitter so much as accuse. The priest stood at the center, a scroll in his hands like a blade wrapped in paper. "The engagement," he began, "is suspended. Purification must be enacted. If refused, the union is void. If performed, the council will reconsider." He did not mention that reconsideration was a theater with a pre-written ending. Arav spoke calmly. "I will not perform a rite that treats the truth as a stain." Murmurs fanned out like birds flushed from a tree. Mira lifted her chin. "And I will not wed a lie purified to look like decorum." The chief elder, a man whose eyebrows had outlived compassion, leaned forward. "Princess, you speak as if choice were a right. Caste is not a preference, it is the spine of order." Mira met his gaze. "If your spine cannot bend, it will break." Irony, the first. Wisdom arrives as insolence when spoken by the young. The matriarch rose, not to plead, but to measure the room. "We took him in," she said. "We gave him a name and raised him in our dharma. If he is impurity, then I am its priest." The council recoiled. Mercy spoken aloud is always mistaken for guilt. The priest unrolled the scroll. "Witnesses attest. The child was abandoned at our door. Evidence suggests Dalit origin. To preserve cosmic order, we must act." "Cosmic order," Lakshmi murmured, "has never eaten from our pots, or it would know hunger outranks order." Eyes snapped toward her, a servant daring to speak. The chief elder hissed, "Remove her." Arav stepped between. "She stays. If you judge me, judge the truth with me." Reluctantly, they allowed it. Truths, once admitted to the room, have a habit of multiplying. The priest continued, voice steady. "The council proposes 3 paths. 1, the prince submits to purification, then lives under observance for a year. 2, he renounces claim to lineage and leaves in quiet. 3, he refuses and is exiled publicly to warn others. Warn them of what? Mira asked. That love is combustible? That compassion is contagious? Warn them, the elder said, that a city must remain clean. Arav's laugh was small and dangerous. If cleanliness requires exile, then your city is allergic to its own conscience. Fact the first. In several princely states before 1950, exile for caste transgression functioned as social execution. Names erased from records, portraits removed, histories edited into obedience. Curiosity the first. Some palaces kept a locked room of displaced portraits, a hidden gallery where faces stared into darkness so that the walls would not forget what the books refused to print. Debate the first. Is a society moral if its memory is curated against compassion? The priest cleared his throat. Choose. Arav looked to Mira. He did not need words. She nodded once, a vow distilled to movement. We choose the fourth path, Arav said, the one not offered. There is no fourth path, the elder replied. There is when the first three are cruelty, Mira said. We will leave on our terms with our names intact. The council erupted. Voices layered over one another. Outrage, prophecy, bureaucratic fear. The priest shouted for silence. The hall obeyed after a long, humiliating moment. Then know this, the chief elder said, spitting each word like a curse. From this day, the prince is no longer of this house. The princess, if she follows, is no longer of hers. Let the roads be their lineage and dust their dowry. Irony the second. Power performs curses when it cannot perform kindness. The matriarch flinched but did not beg. She looked at Arav as if memorizing him for a future that would refuse photographs. You will have no protection out there, she whispered. He shook his head. For the first time, I will have myself. A scribe scratched furiously at parchment, embalming the moment in ink. Two guards stepped forward, hesitant, as if their bodies understood what their orders did not. That enforcement is a cheap imitation of fate. Take the servant, the elder added, pointing at Lakshmi. She incited sacrilege. Mira's hand went to the hilt of her ceremonial dagger. It was not merely decoration, it had tasted air before. Touch her, she said evenly, and I will teach this hall the difference between sanctity and cowardice. The guards stopped. The priest swallowed. The matriarch closed her eyes, then opened them with a steadiness sharpened by love. She leaves with them, she said, on my authority. You have none, the elder snapped. Then consider this my last act before relinquishment, she replied. Grace when cornered is indistinguishable from defiance. A messenger hurried in, cheeks flushed. He whispered to the priest, who fought to maintain his mask. The city gathers outside, the priest announced, reluctant. They want a verdict. They want spectacle. Give them neither, Arav said. Give them a door closing. Irony the third. Crowds demand justice, but settle for theater. The council conferred in a low, vicious hum. The decision, when it came, was as old as stone. Exile, the elder declared, effective at sunset. Leave by the southern gate. If you return, you will be punished as defilers. Arav bowed, not to the council, but to the moment, as one bows to a teacher who has finished hurting you into clarity. Mira did not bow. She looked at the room as if evaluating a battlefield already won by leaving it. Lakshmi wept without sound. As they turned to go, the priest called out almost kindly, "Take the lesser road, the market will be hostile." Mira paused. "So are we," she said, and walked on. They moved through corridors thick with the smell of extinguished lamps. Servants pressed themselves against walls, eyes lowered, mouths busy pretending not to exist. The palace had become a museum of former certainties. The matriarch caught up to them near the Banyan court. She carried a small bundle, bread, dried mango, a ring wrapped in cloth. "For the first hunger," she said, placing it in Arav's hands. "For the first bargaining. For the first night the sky forgets your names." Arav embraced her. He did not call her mother. Some words are too holy to use when the world is listening. She touched Mira's cheek. "Guard him from himself," she whispered. "He is already choosing himself," Mira said. "Help me guard what the world will try to call regret." They reached the southern wing. The halls here smelled of cool stone and old rain. A last servant, A boy with ink on his fingers stepped from a niche and pressed a folded paper into Arav's palm. "I copied the registry page," he whispered. "In case they erase you." Arav glanced down. The page was blank where his name should be. The boy shrugged, ashamed. "I thought perhaps emptiness could be useful too." They stepped into the inner courtyard. Above, the sky burned a bruised gold, evening rushing toward its verdict. The southern gate waited, a rectangle of light leading to a road lined with neem trees that pointed everywhere and nowhere. From the western corridors came the sound of metal, not ceremonial music but armor. The council had reconsidered kindness and remembered fear. "Faster," Mira said. They quickened their pace. Lakshmi struggled to keep up. Arav slowed to take her arm. At the mouth of the gate, a figure stood silhouetted against the dying light, the chief elder flanked by guards. Behind him, townspeople pressed forward, craning to see. The elder raised a hand. "One last condition," he said. "Leave without the woman. She belongs to this house." Lakshmi squeezed Arav's arm, ready to surrender herself to save him. He tightened his grip. "She belongs to the truth," he said. The elder smiled, a small, sour victory. "Then the truth will bleed for you." He nodded to the guards. Swords gleamed. The crowd inhaled. The moment balanced on the edge of steel, and then the temple bell crashed through the air, one colossal note, wrong for the hour, wrong for the ritual, shaking dust from the pillars. Every head turned toward the shrine. Flames leaped in the sanctum where no hands had kindled them. The guards hesitated, superstition stronger than orders. Mira's eyes flashed. "Now," she whispered. They ran, through the gate, into the howl of the waiting city. Behind them, a shout rose, not quite a command, not quite a prayer, and the first arrow hissed through air, hungry for a name to carry. The arrow sang past Arav's ear and buried itself in the gate's wooden jaw. Splinters leapt like startled insects. Mira pulled him forward. Lakshmi clutched her sari and ran, breath thinned to thread. The southern road exploded into voices, some calling blessings, most calling blood. They cut left into a spice lane where sacks of chili and turmeric stacked like small, fragrant fortresses. The air burned their throats. Tears cut clean tracks through the dust on their faces. A second arrow hissed and nicked a chili sack. Red powder burst into the air, a sudden storm of flame that blinded the first two guards. "Up," Mira said. She vaulted a cart, toes barely kissing wood, and scrambled a stair that hugged the alley wall. Arav followed, pulling Lakshmi after him. The stair delivered them to a flat white roof, lime-washed and bright even under a bruised sky, a ship's deck cut from stone. From here the city was a mosaic, courtyards like open palms, drying saris like captured sunsets, temple spires poking the sky as if to keep it from collapsing. Rooftops formed a nervous constellation, some low and near, some distant and daring. Between them, alleys, shadows, voices like nets. "Rooftops," Mira said, already moving, sari hitched, ankles ringing. "They know the streets. We must know the sky." Irony, the first, the palace had taught them to walk in lines. Survival demanded they learn to walk on edges. They sprinted along the roofline, pigeons lifted like shaken thoughts. A woman paused at her terrace, a bowl of lentils in her hands, watching silently as 3 lives revised themselves. She did not cry out. Her eyes said she remembered the day the gods had judged her too. They leapt the first gap, a narrow lane, a clean arc. Arav landed awkwardly and rolled. Lakshmi, with Mira's hand bracing her, made it across with a gasp that turned into laughter mid-air. Fear surprised them all. Behind, guards poured onto the roofs, boots a clumsy drumbeat. "Southward," someone shouted. "They head for the old quarter." The old quarter was a maze of low houses painted lime white to keep heat at bay. Some roofs touched, others flirted across dangerous distances. Children played with paper kites where law forgot them. Drums rolled from a shrine where no one had scheduled a ritual. Mira moved like water poured from a precise height. Lakshmi followed with a stubborn, joyous fury, a woman who had cooked for gods and now cooked speed from fear. "Stop!" a guard shouted from 2 roofs back, raising a bow. He loosed. The arrow bit the parapet inches from Mira's hip, stone dust salting her skin. She did not slow. They reached a wider gap, too wide to jump clean. A rickety wooden plank bridged it, more suggestion than structure. Arav tested it with his foot. It creaked a warning. "No time," Mira said, stepping onto it with the faith of a good liar. The plank bowed, held, complained. She crossed. Arav followed, breath lodged in his throat. The plank wailed under his weight, but lived. Lakshmi put a foot on it, then drew back, eyes wide. "I'm heavy with years," she said. "I'll break it." Arav started back, but Mira was faster. She crouched at the far edge, hands out. "You've carried houses in your hands," she said. "Let us carry you across." Lakshmi's mouth tilted into something like mischief. "Then carry me like guilt," she said, stepping onto the plank. It bent toward a ruin no one wanted. Arav leaned his weight backward, counterbalancing. Mira reached and caught Lakshmi's wrists, drawing her forward inch by perilous inch. The plank cracked but did not split. Lakshmi tumbled into their arms, laughing again. That same impossible laughter, victory's younger sister. Irony, the second. Everything fragile becomes trustworthy when danger signs its name on it. From the lanes below, the crowd's noise pitched higher. Some shouted, "Shame!" Others shouted, "Let them go!" Marketplace justice, precise as weather. Her fruit seller lobbed an unripe mango at the nearest guard, missed and shrugged as if throwing fruit were simply a form of prayer. They crossed another roof, ducked under a clothesline jeweled with water drops. A child appeared, barefoot and serious, holding out a clay cup of water. Mira took it, made Lakshmi drink first, then Arav, then sipped last. The child nodded once, a transaction without currency, and vanished. Fact the first. Many Indian towns were designed with interconnected rooftops, accidental escape routes born from climate and closeness. In times of riot or curfew, roofs often served as civic arteries, where rumor ran faster than law. Curiosity the first. Some rooftops kept jars of colored glass to trap bad eyes in their reflections. Others painted a small blue circle near the stair, a sign to strangers that water could be asked for without shame. Debate, the first, is a city kinder at height, where faces replace uniforms, or is kindness merely the courage of being seen? They reached the old dye house, a long rectangle of roof splashed with the ghosts of colors, indigo bruises, turmeric suns, saffron rivers dried mid-ripple. Beyond it lay a low temple, its dome patched in lime, a stubborn survivor. If they reached that dome, they could descend an outer stair into a neighborhood that answered to no counsel. A guard found his courage and leapt a gap clumsily, nearly falling. Another followed with a grunt and more success. An arrow whistled low and split a terracotta water jar, releasing a sheet of coolness that turned the roof to a brief mirror. Mira skidded, caught herself. Arav steadied Lakshmi with a hand that remembered every ritual and betrayed none. "Left," Mira said, reading the city like scripture. They veered onto a narrow roof whose far edge dropped to a courtyard filled with drying millet. Women looked up, measuring risk the way they measured grain, sharply. One of them shouted, "Run straight, then right, you'll find the ladder." Her voice turned to the guards. "Turn back, the roof can't carry your arrogance." Laughter blew like confetti. They reached the ladder, old wood, patient nails. Mira went first, then Lakshmi, then Arav, who paused halfway when a guard sprang to the edge above and swung down after him. The guard's foot slipped. Arav grabbed his wrist on reflex. For a moment their eyes locked, a simple recognition that both were human before they were roles. Then the guard wrenched free with a snarl, embarrassed by almost gratitude. On the ground, air felt heavier. The alley smelled of wet lime and cumin. The temple dome loomed close. Its outer stair spiraled like a quiet sermon. They climbed. Halfway up, bells inside began to ring, not ritual but warning or welcome. At the top, they crossed the platform where the city opened like a book you weren't supposed to read. Arav looked down. The council's men spilled from the southern gate like ink, pooling, dividing, flowing into the market's veins. He felt a strange steadiness, fear thinned by purpose. "From here," Mira said, "we cut across the last roofs and reached the river ghat." "The river?" Lakshmi asked, breathless. "It forgets everyone's name," Mira said. It will forget ours safely. Irony, the third. When land becomes doctrine, water becomes mercy. They ran again, a final sprint over a trio of roofs that sloped like folded palms. The last gap was the widest. The river house to the GAT office, 6 feet that felt like forever. Mira gauged it, nodded to Arav and leapt. She landed light, turned and beckoned. Arav sent Lakshmi's bundle first, then helped her step into a run. She jumped. For a fateful second she hung, sari a red flare. Mira caught her forearms and hauled her across with a grunt that was also a laugh. Arav backed up, ran and flew. The instant stretched, wind, bells, a kite snapping free above him, and then stone caught him and the world resumed. Below, the GAT steps descended to the river, which moved with the lazy confidence of old gods. Boats bobbed, some painted with eyes, some with prayers. Men argued about fish, women argued about everything else, life, stubborn and unsupervised. They clattered down the steps. Mira hailed a boatman with a scar like a comma on his cheek. Across, she said, now. He eyed them, the guards on the roofs behind, the river ahead. He spat thoughtfully, then nodded. Truth rides free, he said. Lie pays double. They tumbled in. The boat rocked. The river took it. The boatman pushed off with a pole, then bent to the oars. Water slapped the hull with small, urgent hands. On the far bank, green rose like a promise. Fields, the suggestion of a road that traveled without asking for papers. Behind them, guards gathered at the top of the GAT. Bows ready, orders tangled. One arrow arced, fell short, and kissed the river with the embarrassment of uselessness. Arav exhaled a laugh that hurt. Mira's hand found his. Lakshmi lay back against the boater's belly and stared at the sky as if memorizing its indifferent kindness. The river widened between them and the city. Bells faded. Voices thinned to rumor. What are we now? Arav asked, the question barely louder than the oars. Fugitives, Mira said, which is another word for authors. Lakshmi closed her eyes. Or cooks, she said. We will need a kitchen. On the roofline, a final figure appeared, the matriarch, small against the sky. She raised her hands not to curse, not to bless, but as if measuring the space her love had to cross. The gesture collapsed into itself. She lowered her arms. The wind took her silence and folded it into the river's song. The boat nosed toward reeds on the far bank. The boatman grinned without teeth. Step light, he said. Mud remembers. They stepped into a shore that did not know their names. Grass bowed. Air smelled of rain and rice and the clean breath of distance. Behind them, the city glared with 1,000 small eyes. Ahead, fields waited like blank pages. And high above, a lone kite, perhaps the same one, tugged free of its string at last, skittered, then sailed, a red scrap writing an alphabet only wind could read. The village received them like weather, without ceremony, with consequence. Huts thatched with patience, walls lime-washed to the color of small hopes, a single neem tree ruling the crossroads like an old judge who preferred shade to verdicts. Here, names mattered only as far as debts reached. Beyond that, hands spoke for themselves. Arav offered his hands. The first days they refused him, not out of malice but habit. Princes did not carry mud. Books did not split firewood. Ritual did not plant rice. But the fields had no theology except moisture, and moisture is democratic. By the second week, his palms had learned blisters. By the third, blisters had learned skin. Mira traded silk for cotton, and the balance of a blade for the balance of a water pot. The women watched her, the angle of her spine at the well, the way she tied her sari to keep both dignity and oxygen. They tested her with errands that measured not strength but humility. She returned from each with dust on her ankles and a quiet that did not ask for applause. A child began to trail her, silent, curious, certain she was teaching something even when she only walked. Lakshmi built a kitchen from absence. 3 stones, a blackened pot, a roof of thrift. The first fire she lit here smelled different from palace fires. It carried less spice and more permission. She cooked dal until the wind envied it, then fed whoever appeared. Villages understand ownership the way rivers understand banks, as an agreement, not a law. At night they slept in a hut that kept out everything but weather and memory. The rain made its old grammar on the roof. Geckos scribbled across the walls. On a shelf, Arav kept what he called his library, a single palm leaf manuscript rescued from the palace days, now swollen with humidity, and a fluted reed he did not yet dare to call a flute. On the 13th evening, a messenger arrived, not official, merely inevitable. He wore the council's colors without the council's comfort. "You are summoned," he said, not meeting Arav's eye. "Return, submit to purification, accept the law's mercy. If you refuse, you invite consequence." He did not define consequence. Villages keep a wide vocabulary for that word. Mira answered first. "Tell them we are already under a higher law, hunger, rain, fatigue, and the dignity of not lying." The messenger swallowed, nodded to the dust, and left. Irony. The first. Power insists on being disobeyed in writing, but obedience happens quietly. The weeks settled into a rhythm that did not ask consent. Dawn at the well morning in the fields, noon heat like a sermon you cannot leave evening at Lakshmi's fire, nights long enough for dreams to find their feet. Arav learned the stubborn arithmetic of harvest. Mira learned the difference between herbs that heal and herbs that forgive. Lakshmi learned to sit sometimes without serving. The village headman visited on the 21st day. He came with two elders who looked like decisions in search of a reason. "You can stay," he said, "if you pay what everyone pays. Labor for the canal, a handful of grain after the monsoon, respect for the old dead and the young living." He did not ask for caste, he asked for contribution. Arav nodded. Mira held his hand in her lap like a treaty that could not be amended. At the end of that month, Arav's first harvest blister bled a little and did not apologize. He washed it in the canal. The water was brown with confidence. He remembered a marble basin, perfumed and obedient, and realized it had never made him feel clean. Fact the first. Across India, Dalit communities formed cooperatives long before the word became fashionable. Collective wells, rotating credit, shared tools, unshared humiliation. Survival arranged itself without permission. Curiosity the first. Some villages kept a shadow book, a ledger where names were written in charcoal instead of ink, so mistakes could be washed away by rain. They said it was for debts. Everyone knew it was for dignity. Debate the first. Does justice arrive as policy from above or as practice from below? News traveled the way news always travels. Too quickly when it hurts, too slowly when it helps. A trader whispered that the council had replaced Arav's portrait with a lamp facing the wall, so the flame would not embarrass the room. A pilgrim swore the temple bell now rang half a note flat, as if reluctant to agree with itself. Mira smiled without humor. "Good," she said. "Let their silence learn to limp." Some nights, a flute answered the frogs. Arav played softly, as if apprenticed to the dark. The melody did not try to be beautiful, it tried to be true. Children perched outside the hut, knees like punctuation marks, listening. Lakshmi pretended to complain. Music makes the dal jealous, but her ladle struck the pot in time. Irony the second. Exile steals stage and grants audience. It was during one such night that the riders arrived. No banners this time, no scroll pretending to be mercy. 3 men on thin horses, steel honest under their cloaks. The village exhaled in unison and hid its children behind its doors. The leader dismounted awkwardly, city hips, village ground. He read from memory, not paper. By order of the council, the runaway prince and his accomplices must submit to purifying rites at once or be seized. His eyes skipped over Lakshmi like a stone avoiding water. They landed on Mira and flinched as if iron could glare. "We will not submit," Mira said. "We will not be seized either." "Then we will take you," he answered, voice professional with borrowed courage. Arav stood. He did not reach for a weapon. He reached for the truth that had brought him here. "Before you do," he said, "eat." The rider blinked. "What?" "Eat," Arav repeated. "Lakshmi's dal, the canal's water, this village's bread. If we must be purified, let your hunger witness our impurity first." Lakshmi lifted the lid. The scent of cumin and proof visited the night. The riders hesitated. The leader's face performed a conflict it had not rehearsed. Finally, he shook his head. "We do not share food with—" He didn't finish the sentence. Words, too, no cliffs. "Then drink," Mira said, holding out a brass cup. "The river does not ask our mothers' names before it cools our throats." He swatted the cup aside. It fell, rang, and rolled to a stop against Arav's foot. Irony, the third. When mercy is refused, it becomes evidence. The village headman stepped forward, hands folded, not in surrender, but in syntax. "This is our ground," he said quietly. "Take disputes to the road. Here we have harvests to worry about." The riders conferred briefly, discovering that power travels poorly where roofs are low and doors are near. The leader pointed toward the fields. "At first light outside the village bounds." "Agreed," Arav said. They rode off with noise designed to be remembered. The silence afterward was not relief, it was rehearsal. Mira turned to Arav. "You should not have agreed." "Refusing would have brought steel into kitchens," he said. "Dawn is kinder." "Dawn," Lakshmi muttered, "is just night pretending to be brave." They did not sleep. The children did, which is proof miracles sometimes keep their schedules. Arav watched the coals breathe. Mira sharpened nothing but her attention. Lakshmi whispered to the pot as if it were an oracle that understood appetite. When the first angle of sun made the neem tree remember its shape, they walked to the field beyond the canal. Dew held its breath on the grass. Birds took attendance. The riders were already there, 3 shadows attached to men who had not slept either. "No crowd," Mira said, surprised. "Crowds complicate bravery," the leader replied. "I prefer clarity." "What do you want from us?" Arav asked. "Proof you will not return. Proof you understand consequence. Proof that purity is not negotiable." "Purity," Mira said, "has never fed anyone." He lifted his hand. The 2 riders spread, practiced geometry. Steel woke with a sound as old as misunderstanding. Arav stepped forward. "If you must take a prisoner," he said, "take me, leave them." Mira moved beside him. "Then take us both, or neither." Lakshmi's laugh cracked the morning. "Fools," she said. "Take me, I am the one who spoke first." The leader looked at her, startled by the gravity of a woman carrying a ladle. Something softened in his face, a childhood he had not consented to forget. He shook it off. "No," he said, then lower, almost kindly, "Run." They did not. The first rider lunged. Mira stepped into his momentum and let it pass, a warrior's old language remembered in a peasant's pose. Arav did not strike. He stood his ground like a door that refuses both entry and exit. The second rider circled toward Lakshmi. She picked up a handful of ash from last night's fire and blew it into his eyes. He swore at the universe and sneezed at justice. The leader raised his sword, meaning to end rehearsal and begin history. Arav met his eyes. "If you do this," he said, "remember the taste of the water you refused." For a heartbeat, the sword hovered, caught between training and thirst. Then, from the village ridge, a sound spilled, 100 feet, small and decisive. The women came first, then the old men, then children carrying stones like arguments. No weapons, only numbers, and the indifference of people who have outlived decrees. The riders saw the future arrive on 2 bare feet and reconsidered. The leader lowered his sword. "Go," he said. "Far. Do not let me find you." Arav bowed, not gratitude but acknowledgement. Mira nodded, a treaty signed by breath. Lakshmi pressed a warm flatbread into the leader's hand. He did not refuse a second time. They walked until the village became rumor and the field became road. Noon found them under a lone acacia whose shadow performed generosity badly but sincerely. They ate in quiet. They drank from a well that asked nothing. The horizon, polite, waited. "Where now?" Arav asked. "Home," Mira said. "We do not have one," he replied. She smiled, small and accurate. "We are building it with every refusal." Lakshmi leaned back against the tree. "Ashes remember," she said, "but so does bread." Far behind them, a bell rang. One note, stubbornly clear. It did not sound like the palace, it sounded like the future clearing its throat. The road became narrower the farther they went, as if the world wanted to measure their persistence before offering rest. The fields gave way to hills, the hills to a forest with air that smelled of rain waiting for permission. Leaves whispered gossip to the wind, roots tripped memories that had nowhere left to hide. They walked without speaking for hours. Words felt like a luxury they had already spent. Lakshmi leaned on a branch she called her third leg, humming a tune that might have been a prayer or a recipe. Meera led, her sari torn and refolded so many times it had become a map of decisions. Arav followed, carrying the silence between them like an heirloom. When night approached, they found a plateau where the earth had forgotten its own height. Below them a valley opened, green, quiet, unclaimed. Fireflies lit their early conspiracies in the grass. "Here," Meera said. "Here?" Arav asked, half in awe, half in exhaustion. "Yes, no flags, no temples that demand ancestry, only sky." They gathered twigs. Lakshmi coaxed a flame, feeding it with the same patience she had once fed gods. The fire caught, small and honest. Its light touched their faces like forgiveness. Irony, the first. Exile begins as escape, but ends as arrival. Arav sat close to the fire, tracing a circle in the dirt. "All my life," he said, "I was told that Dharma means order. But order built from fear is only stillness pretending to be peace." Meera added another branch. "Perhaps Dharma is the courage to rewrite what was mispronounced." Lakshmi stirred a pot of lentils, the scent simple and astonishing. "Maybe Dharma is eating what you cook, not what you're told to." They laughed softly, the first laugh unborrowed from disbelief. The valley caught it, held it, and gave it back as echo. The night deepened. Above them, stars rearranged themselves into new stories, ones without thrones or hierarchies. Meera lay back on the ground. "Do you think they'll forget us?" Arav shook his head. "No. They'll retell us incorrectly, which is worse and better. That's how legends survive." Fact the first. After India's independence in 1947, many princely families lost not only power but also narrative. Their stories were retold by the people who once bowed to them, the language of history-shifting accent. Curiosity, the first. In some villages, festivals honor unnamed lovers who defied caste to die together. No one knows their names, yet offerings are made as if they were kin. Debate the first. Is immortality memory without name or name without memory? The fire dimmed to an amber hush. Lakshmi lay down with a sigh that sounded like completion. "Tomorrow we find water," she murmured. "And if we find water, we find a village. And if we find a village, we find mouths to feed. That is how gods return, through appetite." Her words became slow, then rhythmic. Sleep arrived like gratitude. Arav and Meera sat awake a little longer, watching the flame die. "Do you regret leaving?" she asked. "I regret staying as long as I did," he answered. "Then say something to the fire, for what we've lost." He thought for a moment, then spoke. "To every god who demanded silence, I give back my voice. And I," Meera said, "give back my fear." Irony, the second. The moment you offer everything, you realize you needed none of it. The wind lifted. The fire sighed. For a heartbeat, the night looked exactly like peace dressed in shadow. Dawn arrived gently, as if aware of the cost of waking. The valley glowed with dew. Each blade of grass a promise renewed without consultation. Arav stepped into the morning light, barefoot, and felt the ground accept him. Meera joined him, eyes narrowed against the gold. Lakshmi followed, slower, smiling at the birds that scolded the sky for sleeping late. Together, they began to build, not palaces, not altars, but shelter. A hut that would breathe with them, a hearth that would not require lineage to bless its flame. Irony the third. The only dynasty that survives is made of kindness. By midday, smoke rose again, kitchen smoke, not sacrificial. A handful of villagers from nearby fields wandered up, curious about this new family with no surname. They brought water, laughter, and questions. Lakshmi traded lentils for stories. The exchange rate was fair. When the sun reached its zenith, a bell rang from somewhere far below. Faint, patient, undecided. The three looked at one another. "The city," Mira said softly. "No," Arav replied. "Listen." The bell rang again, slower, deeper, forgiving. "It's the temple," Lakshmi whispered. "The bell that once accused us." Mira smiled. It finally learned another note. They listened until the sound faded into something quieter than silence, understanding. Years later, travelers passing through that valley speak of a small village with a kitchen that never closes and a well that never asks your caste. They say a woman named Lakshmi cooks there, her hair silver, her ladle precise as prayer. They say a man named Arav plays a reed flute by the fields and that his music bends crops toward rain. They say a woman called Mira sits beneath a neem tree teaching children to read, first letters, then themselves. No one asks where they came from. The story begins where they chose to stay. Once a year, when the first harvest smoke curls skyward, someone rings a bell they found buried in the riverbank. It does not sound like the palace, it sounds like forgiveness learning melody. And if you listen closely, beyond the wind, beyond the years, you may hear the echo of three voices in laughter and the faint whisper of fire turning into bread. You've just heard the story of an Indian billionaire prince who discovered he was born untouchable. On the day of his royal engagement, a tale of fire, lineage and love that chose truth over luxury. If this story touched something quiet in you, stay a little longer with us. Subscribe to Secrets and Destinations and keep traveling through the world's history tried to forget. Comment below. What would you have done if your truth was forbidden by the gods? And if you believe love can be its own kind of rebellion, share this story. Let it find another heart that still listens for the sound of bells forgiving themselves. Here, we tell stories not to escape the world, but to remind it to feel.